Okay, let's do learning exercise 13. We're going to do some more practice with if-then statements, switch statements, and while loops. And we're going to create a virtual pet. I do a fair amount of work in robotics, and so I think this would be a fun example to work on. So imagine you have we used to have these little pets. I think what they're called, like Tamagotchis. They were these little keychain-like virtual pets that kids had long ago. I also have this cute little robotic dog, which I bring to class for this mascot for this assignment. And the dog walks along and barks, and if you talk to it, it barks and whines at you. If you leave it alone, it just whines sadly, and then eventually they'll fall asleep. So this is what this is kind of based on, is a robotic dog I have. So your job is to build a virtual pet, and you can start by downloading this initial file down here and opening that up. You should see a main interface and a virtual pet here. I'm going to just compile these. So the main interface, all it does is create a virtual pet and call the main loop in the virtual pet. And we'll talk about this main loop in just a sec. So inside virtual pet, well, let me run the virtual pet first. So I'm just going to do a new pet and give it some name. And inside there's only one thing to do, and that's the main loop. And so I'm going to run that. And so it says the dog is sleeping. What do you want to do? We can pet the dog, leave the dog alone, or quit. If you leave the dog alone, the dog continues to sleep. If you leave the dog alone, it continues to sleep. If you pet the dog, it wakes up. Okay, dog is awake. And now you can do some other stuff with it. So the menu is changed to the dog is happy, and when the dog's happy, you have different choices. You can walk the dog, play ball with the dog, or quit the program. So again, I can walk the dog, and the dog's happy, or I can play ball with the dog, and you play ball with the dog gets tired and goes to sleep. Now the dog is asleep, and you have the sleep menu. So there's two menus: one when the dog is happy, things do, and one when the dog is asleep. So that's the basic idea. So let's look at how that's set up. Oops, I have to quit the program here. Okay, now let's see how that works. So here's our virtual pet. We have a scanner here. Now we have these state variables. These are integers that are constants. And there's one for each state. This is what is called a state-driven object, and so there's two states, a happy and a sleep, and we just assign them numbers. They just have to be different numbers. It really doesn't matter what numbers they are. So we say happy is 1 and asleep is 2, and then we have another one called done, and that's 9 for now. And eventually you'll create some more state variables here. And then we have a state variable. This actually is going to store the state of the pet, and it's either going to be set to happy or asleep or done. So it's either going to be 1, 2, or 9. But we're going to use these constants to refer to those. So that's our state variable, and we can use that anywhere in any of the methods because it's defined. These are all defined at the class level, so we can use them in any of the methods. So here's our main loop. This is the main loop the dog goes. There's a while loop here. So first we set the state of the dog to asleep, and then we say while the state is not done. So while we haven't set the state to done, we're going to do this loop, and this loop goes down to here, and it's going to loop again and again. Each time it's going to check on the state. We use a switch statement here, and if state is asleep, we display the sleep menu, and we'll see that down here in just a sec. Otherwise, if the state is happy, we display the happy menu. And then we have a problem if we have an illegal state, we print that out. And then we keep going until finally, if the state ever gets to be done, then we just say deactivating your virtual dog. So there's these two menus, sleep menu and happy menu, and they're defined down here. So here's our sleep menu. So we say the dog is sleeping. What do you want to do? And you have a couple options when the dog is asleep. And we print out the menu and read in an integer into action. 1, 2, or 3 they should pick. So if they pick 1, that means you want to pet the dog, and the dog wakes up. And this is important. We change the state to happy then. So now the state is happy. So the next time through the loop, the happy menu will be displayed. Otherwise, if you leave the dog alone, the dog will stay asleep. we set the state to asleep again, and so the sleep menu will be displayed next time through the loop. If they choose 3, quit, we set the state to done, and then that'll exit the loop. So again, inside our switch statement, if it were asleep, we display that sleep menu, and then when we're done, the state is changed. So now we go back up here into the while loop again. And so if the state is done, we exit out. Otherwise, we go in here, and depending on what the state is, we either display the sleep menu again or the happy menu again. And the happy menu is very similar. It's just say the dog's happy and looking at you. What do you want to do? You can walk the dog, play ball with the dog, or quit the program. We read the action, their choice, into this action variable, an integer. If it's 1, we set the state to happy. So these happy and asleep, done, those are these variables defined up at the top. So we just use those to refer to the different states so we keep track of them better. So if you walk the dog, it'll become happy. If you play ball with the dog, you'll play ball with it, it'll get tired and it'll go to sleep, so we set the state to asleep. And if you choose to quit, we set the state to done. Okay, so now let's see, what do you have to do? So first you have to choose what kind of pet you want. You can keep going with the dog, you can change it to a cat, that's kind of fun, hamsters, an owl, a dragon, a Pokemon, whatever you want. Just make some fun pet for this. Okay, and then add at least 2 states to your pet, such as hungry or sad or angry, lonely, whatever states you want. So these are just some sample ones. So add 2 more states. And then for each state, you've got to do 3 things here. First, we have to define new constants. So up at the top, happy, asleep are 1 and 2. So define your new constants in there. What are they? And give them names and values. Don't use 1 or 2 again, or 9, so use some other number. Okay, define your new constants. Modify the switch statement in main loop. Okay, so in the main loop now, here's the main loop. We have this switch statement based on the state, and if it's asleep, we call the sleep menu. Happy, we call a happy menu. Okay, so add some more states here. So add a case for, hungry or whatever state you have, and then call the hungry menu and the other menu. Now when you do that, you'll have to define these menus. So let's say we're hungry, case hungry, and then call the hungry menu. So you'll have to define those. So you can go down here and use these menus as templates. Each state should have different options. So if the dog is hungry, or your dragon is hungry, you want to be, letting the dragon loose to eat the sheep in the field, or giving the dog a bone or something. So you want different options here for the hungry. So again, you can use this as a template for your different menus, but change the names so that you can call them correctly up here. So again, you'll need 2 new constants at the top, at least 2 more states, at least 2 more constants, 2 more states, and then duplicate the menus and redo these. Now you'll probably have to then add some statements here. So to these, you want to be able to get to all the states. So it might be good to draw out a diagram. I actually just draw these out on paper usually. So here, if we're asleep and we leave the dog alone, we stay asleep. If we pet the dog, we go over here. And now if the dog's happy, and we can look at the options when the dog is happy. If we walk the dog, it's still happy. If we play ball with the dog, it goes to sleep. So I could diagram this. If we walk the dog, it stays happy. If we play with the dog, it goes to sleep. If you're going to add some new states here, you're going to have some actions that go to that. So if it's happy, and maybe you add another activity, or maybe if you walk the dog and it's happy, then it becomes hungry or something like that. So you have to figure out how you're going to transition to all the states back and forth. Sometimes a quick diagram helps. Okay, so you do these things and you modify your states action menu so you can get to all the new states. So again, you must have 4 states in your final pet. and each state must have at least 2 actions in it, and every state must be reachable. Okay, now a couple bonus challenges in case you get that and you're excited to try out some new things. One is we can add some stochasticity, some randomness to your pet. Um, so rather than your pet always doing the same thing at every time, you can change it so it does things somewhat randomly. So you can create a random number generator, roll a six-sided die or something like that, and depending on the roll of die, do something other. I used to play lots of Dungeons and Dragons growing up, and we used to do lots of stuff like this, rolling die and seeing what would happen. So, for example, when the dog's asleep, and you choose to leave the dog alone, right now every time you leave the dog alone it stays asleep. But maybe you could replace this with some statement like this where you roll a dice and some of the times the dog stays asleep, but other times maybe the dog will wake up hungry or angry or something like that, or happy. So you can replace this one always going to one state to a more complicated thing like that. Another thing is it's sometimes nice to put a little bit of pause in there. So if you say you're going to play with the dog or the dog's going to go to sleep, you might want to have the dog just sit there and not do anything for a while. So there's a something called a thread of execution here, and we can tell our thread to sleep for 1,000 milliseconds, and that's 1 second. So if you want to do 5 seconds, you would make this 5,000. So you can do that. Now this can throw what is called an exception, so we need to put it in what is called a try-catch block. And you won't learn about those until you take Java 2, but for now you can just take this whole thing, put it in your code wherever you want the program to pause for a second. So if I were to copy that out, put it in here, so when it says the dog is sleeping, I can have it pause, let's say for 3 seconds. And I'm going to just auto layout that again. Okay. So I've stuck this try catch block with the sleep thing in here. So it'll sleep now. Let me compile this. And I'll create a new virtual pet. And run the main loop. It says the dog is sleeping. And it sits there for 3 seconds, and then it asks, what do you want to do? And if I say I want to pet the dog, I can do it. I can play ball with the dog, and it says it's sleeping again, and it just sits there for a little bit. And then it asks you, so it waits those 3 seconds. And then I can leave the dog alone, and I'll just wait there for 3 seconds more. Okay, so that's another option of what you can do with this virtual dog. So consider doing either of the bonus exercises if you want. So have fun creating your virtual pet.